Have you ever grabbed a stout that looked like midnight in a glass, took one sip and thought, why does this taste like burnt campfire water? Americans don't drink stout as often as lagers, but when they do, opinions get loud. Today we're ranking 15 famous stout brands, from the ones barely holding on to relevance to the legends that genuinely earn the hype. No snobbery, no ABV flexing, just flavor, consistency, and whether you'd actually reach for a second pour instead of posting it for clout. All right, grab your glass. Let's start at the bottom. 15. Murphy's Irish Stout. Murphy's is the stout you'll occasionally spot tucked beside Guinness, wearing a red label and the confidence of a beer that once expected to conquer the world. Born in Cork and praised in Ireland for being creamier and gentler, Murphy's arrives in the US with the promise of balance, a mellow roast, silky texture, and a sweetness that softens the bitterness found in most dry stouts. On its best day, it feels like a friendly pint designed for people who don't actually love dark beer, yet want to look adventurous. The problem? Its worst days show up too often in America. When freshness slips or distribution lags, the soft creaminess collapses into muted flavor and a flat metallic edge. It becomes more cold brown liquid than stout. And in a market where Guinness dominates the Nitro lane, Murphy's can't lean on identity or nostalgia to save it. Drinkers who adore it are loyal, but for most Americans, Murphy's feels like the understudy who never got enough rehearsals. Pleasant when right, forgettable when off, and too inconsistent to climb higher. 14. Beamish Irish Stout. Beamish has a fierce fan base online. The kind that swears it's the real Irish stout, while everyone else is drinking the corporate imposter. Brewed in Cork for centuries, Beamish brings more aggression than Murphy's. A sharper roast, a smoky echo, and a dry bite that gives it personality. When you get it fresh overseas, it can deliver a stout that feels rustic and alive, like something poured in a pub where the bartender knows your grandfather's nickname. But in the US, Beamish faces two major issues: access and reliability. You don't see it often, and when you do, it's usually been shipped, stored, and mishandled into tired bitterness. That charismatic bite becomes ashy roughness, turning newcomers away before they ever meet the real version. Beamish ranked this low not because it's bad, but because the average American experience simply doesn't match the myth. Until US availability matches its reputation, Beamish remains an echo of greatness rather than a contender. 13. Young's Double Chocolate. Stout Young's Double Chocolate Stout is the beer equivalent of someone walking into a bar wearing a chocolate cake costume. Dramatic, fun, and impossible to ignore. Brewed in England with real chocolate, it pours like a silky mocha and smells like a bakery at closing time. It's a stout for people who want comfort first and beer second, and on that front, it absolutely delivers with creamy texture, cocoa richness, and a sweet profile that glides across the palate. But it lands at number 13 because this stout doesn't always behave like a stout. After one bottle, the sweetness begins to pull ahead of the roast, and what started as charming becomes heavy. Pair it with dinner and the flavors collide. Drink 2 in a row and you're suddenly aware you're sipping thick dessert. It's delightful for dessert lovers and newcomers dipping a toe into dark beer, but for stout purists or session drinkers, it's simply too specialized to climb higher. A treat, not a staple. 12. Deschutes Obsidian Stout. Obsidian Stout is the kind of beer that feels like a steady friend, dependable, comforting, and never loud for the sake of attention. Brewed by Deschutes in Oregon, it leans into classic American stout traits. Dark roast, cocoa bitterness, hints of espresso, and just enough hop presence to remind you it's from the West Coast. There's nothing gimmicky here, just straightforward craftsmanship, but reliability can be a double-edged sword. Obsidian lacks the dramatic flair or cult mystique that many modern stouts rely on. It doesn't come in fancy waxed bottles. It isn't chasing 13% ABV. It's simply a solid brew meant for quiet nights and grilled dinners. And that simplicity keeps it hovering in the middle. The people who swear by it love that it's not trying too hard. But in a ranking built partly on cultural impact and memorability, Obsidian ends up overshadowed by louder, richer, riskier stouts that push boundaries. Strong effort, limited fireworks. 11. Dragon's Milk. Dragon's Milk is the first bourbon barrel stout many Americans ever taste, and for that reason alone, it holds a place in stout history. New Holland Brewing built this beer to feel like a warm handshake from a whiskey barrel. Vanilla sweetness, toasted oak, caramel depth, and a boozy glow that wraps around every sip. At around 11% ABV, it's unapologetically rich and feels closer to a dessert spirit than a casual pint. But while the flavor is bold and memorable, the intensity makes it a one-and-done bottle. Its sweetness and alcohol warmth demand slow sipping, and that limits how often people genuinely reach for it. It's impressive, but not versatile. Dragon's Milk ranks here because it excels as an experience, not as a repeatable go-to stout. It's the stout you introduce to someone when they say they love bourbon, not the one you pour for a second round. Iconic, impactful, but not everyday drinking. If you're already arguing with this ranking in your head, you're exactly who I made this for. Hit like, subscribe, and drop your own stout rankings below. It pushes the video out to more beer nerds and helps me decide which style to rank next. 10 Oskar Blues. 10 Fitty. 10 Fitty doesn't care about subtlety. It rolls out of the can like blackened lava and announces itself with roasted malt, dark chocolate, burnt sugar, and a wall of intensity that hits before you even set the glass down. Oskar Blues built this stout like a high-octane machine. Not delicate, not polite, but unapologetically full force. That power is exactly why people admire it, and why many also tap out after one. At 10.5% ABV with a body dense enough to border on syrupy, 10 Fitty demands commitment. It's the stout equivalent of ordering the hottest wings at the table just to see who can handle it. The fans adore that challenge. They treat it like a rite of passage, the stout you drink when you're ready to graduate from beginner dark beers. But for everyday drinkers, it's more of an occasional thrill than a regular companion. Massive presence, memorable flavor, and absolutely deserving of a top 10 slot, but its intensity keeps it from climbing higher. 9. Sierra Nevada. Narwhal carries itself differently from most Imperial stouts. Instead of leaning into sweetness or flashy ingredients, it pushes deep into roast territory with espresso bitterness, dark fruit shadows, and a structured backbone that feels almost wine-like. Sierra Nevada built this beer to age gracefully, and you can taste that seriousness in every sip. Straight from the bottle, Narwhal is bold, commanding, and just a touch intimidating. Yet beneath the initial impact, there's a surprising sophistication, layers that reveal themselves slowly, especially when the beer warms. It's a stout for people who enjoy watching a beer evolve in the glass, not one you drink mindlessly while scrolling your phone. Its drawback is simple. Narwhal isn't designed for the casual stout fan. The flavor profile is intense, the bitterness stands tall, and the alcohol warmth is unmistakable. It's a connoisseur's stout, admired by those who want depth rather than comfort. Beautiful in its own way, but a little too fierce for the masses, landing it at number 9. 8. Samuel Smith's Oatmeal. Stout few stouts carry the same nostalgic glow as Samuel Smith's Oatmeal Stout. Brewed in North Yorkshire with centuries of tradition behind it, the beer feels like stepping into a quiet English pub on a rainy evening. Smooth oats soften the roast, creating a creamy texture that glides across the palate with notes of cocoa, toast, and light sweetness. This stout doesn't chase trends. It doesn't need barrel aging, pastry flavors, or explosive ABV to earn attention. Its appeal lies in familiarity, a comforting steadiness that modern craft beer sometimes forgets. And that reliability makes it a gateway stout for people who want depth without overwhelming intensity. Its lower placement in the ranking has nothing to do with quality. In fact, its balance is one of its strengths. But in the US, access can be hit or miss, and drinkers often encounter fresher, more expressive local stouts before finding this English classic. Loved by beer historians, appreciated by newcomers, Samuel Smith's lands at 8th for being timeless rather than trendy. 7. Left Hand Milk Stout Nitro. Left Hand turned heads when it proved that Nitro stouts didn't belong exclusively to Guinness. Their milk stout Nitro pours with a cascading creaminess that's become its signature. But the flavor pushes in an entirely different direction. Easygoing chocolate, mellow roast, and a sweetness that rounds off the edges without drifting into dessert territory. This stout wins because it's endlessly approachable. People who usually avoid dark beer find it surprisingly gentle. Meanwhile, seasoned stout fans appreciate that it has character without demanding effort. Served on draft, the velvety texture feels almost luxurious, yet the recipe stays grounded enough to be an everyday option. Its biggest strength is balance. Nothing screams for attention, but everything works together. The lactose, the nitro finish, the soft roast. It's the kind of stout you recommend when someone wants something smooth, and it rarely disappoints. But its comfort-first personality also keeps it from the very top tier, where the stouts tend to be louder or more iconic. Still, it remains a standout American favorite. 6. North Coast Old Rasputin. Old Rasputin has the energy of a beer that knows exactly what it is. Brewed in California, yet styled after the old Russian Imperial stouts, it comes at you with licorice, roasted malt, dark fruit, and a sharp bitterness that lingers with purpose. This isn't a soft stout. It's intense, commanding, and memorable from the first sip. Fans love Old Rasputin because it offers complexity without needing adjuncts or sugary tricks. It feels like a stout built for people who genuinely enjoy deep, roasted profiles. And thanks to its national distribution, many American drinkers discovered serious stouts through this very bottle. Where it falls short, if you can even call it that, is accessibility for newcomers. The bitterness can feel stern, the depth may overwhelm, and its reputation as a beer nerd favorite can intimidate casual drinkers. But among stout classics available in the US, Old Rasputin sits comfortably near the top for sheer character. Bold, brooding, and unforgettable. 5. Goose Island, Bourbon County. Brand Stout Bourbon County is the stout that turned beer releases into overnight campouts. When Goose Island first pushed stout into bourbon barrels, it created an entirely new lane, one where beer could taste like a dessert, a spirit, and a rich indulgence all at once. Thick notes of vanilla, molasses, oak, and dark fruit swirl together with boozy warmth that feels closer to drinking a liquid chocolate truffle than a standard beer. Even after all these years, sipping it still feels like opening a seasonal treat. But that special occasion quality is also what keeps it in the lower half of the top 5. It's rich to the point of decadence, the kind of stout you savor slowly rather than casually drink. A single bottle carries enough weight and sweetness to feel like a whole event. Its legacy is undeniable, and its flavor is massive. But Bourbon County sits at number 5 because it's most enjoyable sparingly. Remarkable, influential, and still a benchmark, yet not the stout most people want on repeat. 4. Founder's Breakfast. Stout Breakfast Stout lives up to its name in spirit, not timing. It's a beer built around coffee in a way few stouts dare to be. Bold aroma, roasted depth, silky texture from oats, and a chocolate layer that pulls everything together. When the bottle opens, you get a wave of espresso so inviting it might trick your brain into thinking you just stepped inside a busy cafe. Unlike many Imperial stouts, Breakfast Stout doesn't need overwhelming sweetness or a high ABV to make a statement. Instead, it wins through balance. It's strong but not exhausting, flavorful without becoming sticky or heavy, and rich without acting like a dessert. This is the stout that works in real life. Winter nights, pub dinners, after-work wind downs, or even weekend brunch if you're feeling bold. It's reliable, expressive, and easy to return to. The reason it doesn't crack the top 3 comes down to sheer cultural weight. The next stouts aren't just delicious, they're institutions. 3. Lagunitas Imperial. Stout Lagunitas has built an empire on hop-forward beers, but their Imperial Stout quietly sits among the best widely available dark beers in the US. It's rich in all the right ways. Deep chocolate tones, roasted grain, touches of molasses, and a firm bitterness that keeps the sweetness in check. Nothing about it feels chaotic or sugar-heavy. It drinks like a stout designed with intention. Big, flavorful, but impressively composed. What earns it the third-place spot is accessibility. You can find it in many states, and it always shows up tasting like the brewery meant it to taste. For a bold stout, that consistency matters. Lagunitas Imperial Stout also appeals to a huge range of drinkers. Newcomers find it approachable compared to the more aggressive Imperial Stouts, while seasoned fans appreciate how it balances heft with restraint. It's the kind of stout you can keep in the fridge year-round. Dependable, expressive, and undeniably satisfying. The highest-ranking American Imperial Stout on the list. 2. Guinness Extra. Stout Guinness Extra Stout often gets overshadowed by the iconic Nitro pint. Yet this bottle carries a different kind of strength. It's sharper, more assertive, and built around a roasted bitterness that snaps into place from the first sip. Where Guinness Draught glides, Extra Stout steps forward with purpose. Dry, crisp, and pleasantly intense. In the US, this version resonates with people who love Guinness, but want something more direct. The carbonation is livelier, the body leaner, and the flavor profile feels closer to the brewery's roots than the creamy pub pour most Americans are used to. It's Guinness stripped down to essentials. No cascading theatrics, just pure stout character. Its biggest advantage is versatility. It pairs beautifully with hearty meals and stands up confidently on its own. The only reason it doesn't reach number 1 is simple. The top spot goes to a beer that shaped how the world thinks about stout, not just how it tastes. 1. Guinness Draught Calling. Guinness Draught, the most famous stout on earth, isn't an exaggeration. It's simply a fact of culture. The iconic cascade, the creamy head, the low bitterness, the gentle chocolate and coffee whispers. It all comes together in a pint that somehow manages to be comforting, recognizable, and endlessly drinkable. This stout doesn't rely on power or sugar or alcohol. Its magic lies in texture and balance. Guinness feels almost weightless despite its dark appearance, making it easy to drink multiple pints without fatigue. It's the beer associated with celebration, football matches, cold nights at the pub, St. Patrick's Day, and countless first stout moments across the US. But beyond flavor, Guinness Draught holds a place in people's lives. It's emotional, it's ritualistic, and it's the stout every other brewer must measure themselves against. That combination of identity, accessibility, and satisfying flavor places Guinness Draught securely at number 1, the stout that defines the category. Whether you're loyal to a classic pint or hunting down the boldest barrel-aged monsters, every stout on this list earned its place. Now it's your turn. Which ranking did I butcher, and which stout deserves more respect? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want more rankings like this, make sure you're subscribed. Cheers to the next pour.